Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the special UN Movement Society Conversation for a Real Compassion series. We have timed today's broadcast to coincide with the height of the international awards season. As the global community turns its attention to the highest achievements in cinematic storytelling, we are honored to go behind the lens of an Oscar-nominated film. I would like to extend a very special thank you to Arnold Kadash, the Consul General of the Czech Republic in Los Angeles, for his support to this event. The Czech Republic played a vital role in bringing the story to life through the co-production house Pink, and we are grateful for the consulate's support in highlighting this important cinematic achievement. We also wish to express our sincere gratitude for the vital role of the Danish film production house Made in Copenhagen in this international collaboration. Today, we are moving away from the headlines to focus on a more universal story, the role of education in a changing world. We are joined by director David Borenstein and co-director Pavel Talankin. While the film takes us to the remote hinterlands, its production was truly a mini-UN collaboration involving creative partners from all over the world. In the spirit of the UN International Day of Education, which took place earlier this year, our conversation will explore the human experience of teaching and the responsibility of the storyteller. Pasha, who served as the event coordinator in his school, documented a transition that speaks to educators everywhere. We are here to discuss the quiet dedication required to protect the integrity of a classroom and the fundamental rights of children to an education. Ultimately, this film reminds us that every child has the right to think, to learn, and to grow in a peaceful environment, ideals that sit at the heart of the UN. As is the tradition with our UN Movie Society events, the views expressed by our guests today are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official position of the UN. Our goal with this series is to provide a neutral platform for artistic dialogue and to explore the universal values through the medium of film. We hope that you will enjoy this cultural discussion. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming David and Pasha. David, thank you so much for being with us today. We are so grateful for you to be here, and tell us what made it so compelling for you to tell this story. I know you were looking to share a specific story about Pasha's life in the remote areas of Russia. What was it about his story that made you realize you had to tell this story?
Well, what really made me feel like I wanted to tell this story was his determination in getting it out. He really wanted to show the world what was happening in his school because something was happening there that he thought everybody needed to see. There was a new patriotic military education that was sweeping across Russia, and it really offended him because he felt so strongly in the rights of children to attain an education that was free from propaganda and encouraged critical thinking and encouraged freedom of thought.
Tell us, what does it mean to have good quality education? And tell us about your experience being a teacher and the joy of working with your students.
До того, как ты стал снимать этот фильм, ты работал учителем. Расскажи нам, а что такое быть хорошим учителем, получить что такое хорошее образование, и расскажи нам чуть-чуть, да, что это было для тебя работать с ребятами, своими учениками.
Ага, но у меня была очень интересная специальность. Я не был учителем, я был педагог-организатор. Я отвечал за праздники, концерты, линейки, утренники, КВН, театры, в общем, за культурную составляющую школы.
I had a really interesting job at the school. I wasn't technically a teacher, I was the events organizer, so that meant I was responsible for all of the cultural programs, the holidays, the festivals, the competitions, the variety shows, the trivia nights, everything that was in the whole cultural life of the school was my responsibility.
Вот. И еще у меня был видеокружок, где дети учились снимать и монтировать.
And I also had a kind of video circle where the students learned how to shoot video and how to edit.
Да, это не это не обязательная школьная программа, это не входит в перечень обязательных предметов, которые школьники должны изучать. Это по желанию для
It
каждого.
wasn't a required class, it was an elective.
So the students wanted to be with you and
Так.
wanted to.
Так что
Experience
те
this.
ученики, которые занимались этим, они очень
Да,
хотели
да, да.
быть с тобой и
Да,
заниматься.
те, которые любят театр, те, которые любят снимать, те, которые любят монтировать, те, которые любят выступать, петь, читать стихи, вот они все ко мне приходят.
What I appreciated so much about your film is how international it was. It's a really international cooperation between multiple countries, between Denmark, where you live, where you're from right now, and the hinterlands in Russia, and also Czech Republic in finalizing and co-producing it with you. So tell us a little bit about this international cooperation and co-directing it with him, and how you had to balance between your perspective, living in Denmark, versus the Russian perspective.
Yeah, for me it was really interesting. I mean, actually our production itself was something like a mini UN, because
Exactly.
we had a Danish production house, a Czech co-production house. I'm an American that's living in Denmark. Our first money came from the UK, from the BBC, who
Interesting.
supported us from the beginning. And of course, the centerpiece of this project was a co-directorship between me, an American director, and Pasha, who at the time of filming was a school teacher in this town of 8,000 people in rural Russia. And that brought such a special perspective to this project. You know, you can make a film with one funder and have one perspective, or one director and have one perspective. We had funders all throughout Europe. There were so many different countries coming in and giving their own perspective. And of course, the direction was about bringing together these two different perspectives, me and Pasha. And it was difficult to do that at times. You know, it's not easy to co-direct with someone who's living in such a radically different environment, to work across language, to work across cultures, to work across different types of societies. But, you know, I think when I look at the film now, what I see is a lot of solutions to these problems inside the filmmaking, and that actually is what made the filmmaking special.
So before you started filming this documentary, you were working in that function. How was it to transition from filming these school activities to actually being a documentary filmmaker? How was the transition?
Как для тебя был такой перешаг от твоего бывшего работы как видеосъемка на именно быть режиссером фильма?
Да. Позвонила зауч, сказала то, что я обязан снимать теперь все эти уроки, чтобы мы могли отчитываться в Министерство образования.
Well, the first thing that happened was that in the administration, they called me in and said now I was going to have to also start filming all of these lectures and required classes that the Ministry of Education was dictating that all schools had to do.
Вот. И я снимал, но я потом понял, после самого первого урока я понял то, что я не имею никакого морального права просто взять и удалить этот материал, чтобы это было только для министерства, чтобы только отчитаться, потому что то, что попадает в камеру, описывает хронологию России и как общество становится милитаризированным.
And I understood even after that very, very first class that I filmed that I didn't have the right, I didn't have the moral right to delete this footage after I uploaded it for the Ministry of Education, and that it couldn't just be to like check off that we had fulfilled our required obligation to do this for the government, that what I was witnessing was the militarization of our country, and this needed to be preserved and for people to see it.
You have such great affection for your hometown. Tell us a little bit about your hometown, Karabakh, and what it means to you.
Очевидно, в фильме «Насколько ты любишь свой родной город Карабах». Расскажите нам чуть-чуть больше про Карабах, для тех, кто не видел фильм.
Ну, Карабаш — это маленький город промышленный, который занимается производством меди.
Karabakh is a small industrial city that mainly does copper mining.
Где все друг друга знают, где Лето очень жаркое, плюс 35, зима очень холодная, минус 40 градусов.
And everyone knows everyone else. In the summer, it's very hot, plus 35 degrees centigrade. In the winter, it's very cold, minus 40 centigrade.
Но такие сильные ветра, как у вас сегодня, у нас такого нет.
But we don't have the kind of strong wind like you're having in New York here today.
And what do you hope the international audience will learn about Karabakh that you won't hear in the daily news?
Что ты хочешь, чтобы международные зрители узнают о Карабахе, которые они бы не знали от ежедневной новости, посмотрев твой фильм?
Да, собственно говоря, ничего. Мы когда делали этот фильм с Дэвидом, я ему говорю: Дэвид, а давай мы не будем говорить, что это Карабаш, потому что эта ситуация в школах с милитаризацией, она по всей стране одинакова. И нет такого, что она вот есть только в Карабаше, но ее нет, например, в Москве. Это по всей стране так.
Сейчас я привожу, но все равно они бы что-нибудь о Карабахе зритель международный. He was saying that when they were filming it, he even in the beginning said to David, let's not even tell anyone that it's Karabakh because it's not like the situation is only happening in Karabakh. This is happening in schools all over the entire country, in the capital in Moscow, it's everywhere. So it really is kind of irrelevant where what we're saying is. Но с другой стороны, твое отношение какое-то дальше.
Дэвид сказал: а что, давай расскажем такой интересный город.
But David said, no, let's tell them about Karabakh. It's such an interesting city.
And on that note, what's happening in this small town, Karabakh, applies to many other places in the world, not just in that country, but in many other countries as well. What, in terms of education and the universal theme of education, what do you hope the audience will take away regarding this theme?
I think what's really important always to keep in mind when watching this film and thinking about what's happening all over the world. You know, I'm from Florida, where we've had some similar issues to what we're seeing right now in Russia. And what's important is to know that children have rights too.
Exactly.
They have the right to their own space. They have the right to rooms and places where they can be themselves and express themselves freely without fear. They have the right to attain an education. They have the right to attain freedom of thought. Education shouldn't be about controlling children. It should be about enabling them to become active participants in democracies and active participants in their societies, to think and make decisions based on themselves. Education has always been part of the democratic project, right? We don't simply are born and become perfect citizens in a democracy. We need to learn it, actually. And a big part of that is a liberal education, where you learn to think and reflect. And that's what school should be about. And that is a fundamental right for children.
Exactly. That's a very powerful perspective. And what do you hope the international community will take away from this film? And how do you feel that your film will build a more compassionate understanding?
I think what this film shows is that our institutions can slip away from us very quickly if we don't take care of them. What we see in this film is Pasha's school changing very dramatically in a very short period of time, and not for the better. So our institutions, just like our children themselves, are something that we need to care for and always put in the work to make sure that we protect them, and they're institutions that we like and that help us and that help society rather than the other way around.
Yeah. Thank you so much for creating and co-directing this film to really highlight that such a small, remote Russian hinterland, actually what's happening there it applies to every issue all around the world in terms of education and the rights of children. Thank you so much. What do you hope the world will learn from this film in terms of having compassion?
Ну и, конечно, то, что происходит в школах, не только такого рода, не только и в России происходит, а в разных других местах по всему миру. И вопрос такой, что ты надеешься, что зритель международный узнают или решают, или как-то реагируют на какие-то
Ну, то, что,
послания.
ну да, я понял вопрос. Да, то, что зрителю открываются глаза, и то, что зритель может проводить аналогии. Вы знаете, была такая очень интересная история
Сейчас
из
я сначала.
Будапешта.
Okay, да, я скажу. So, like, well, what I really hope is that when an international audience sees the film, they'll be able to make an analogy to other places. And there was a really interesting story that just happened in Budapest.
Да. Мы были на кинофестивале там, и на этот фильм стало приходить очень много народу, и организаторам пришлось добавить 6 дополнительных показов, чтобы люди смогли прийти посмотреть.
So we were just at a festival in Hungary, in Budapest, and there were so many people who came to the film that the organizers had to add 6 more screenings to accommodate everybody that wanted to see it.
И за 3 дня их посмотрело 1500 человек.
And in 3 days, 1,500 people watched the film.
Вот. Сам фестиваль маленький, кинотеатры там маленькие, но это очень большая цифра. И даже фестиваль закрылся, а показы «Мистер Никто против Путина» не продолжались.
And the festival is a small festival. The movie theaters are small, but they had that many people. Even after the festival was over, they continued to show the film.
Да, и после Q&A люди подходили и говорили: скажите, когда мы сможем посмотреть, когда мы сможем привести своих родных и близких, чтобы они это увидели тоже, потому что у нас в апреле выборы, и нам очень важно всем показать этот фильм.
And after the screenings, people would come up to me and say, "Please tell us how we can show this to all of our friends and relatives, because we have an election coming up in April, and we need everybody to see this film before the election."
Thank you so much for telling a story which applies not just to your town, but to the world. And it's really helping to create a more compassionate world. Thank you.